Hello, everybody. Today, we're going to get into some more politics of this era, getting into post-World War II politics, and really we're going to look at the development of kind of democracies in the West, focusing mainly on France, West Germany, and Italy, and what were good, what might not have worked so well. So let's get right into it. So in France, much of the post-Cold War era will be the Charles de Gaulle show, and upon the ending of the war, he had an ultimate goal to reestablish the greatness of France. And he was one of the people that did help put forth together the Fourth Republic, which was going to return to a parliamentary system of government now that we got rid of the Vichy. Lots of political parties were going to be involved. De Gaulle actually thought this was a bit much, and so for a little while, he's actually going to withdraw from politics. Later on, he'll kind of come back, but we have the general idea that you elect a president, we have universal suffrage, lots of political parties going on. However, eventually de Gaulle wanted to get back into politics, and he forms the French Popular Movement. And part of that was due to the fact of France particularly struggling abroad. It had massive issues in both Vietnam and Algeria, two colonies that they were trying to hold on to, and two colonies that they would fight wars with, and two colonies that they would eventually both lose. I do cover Vietnam a little bit more in depth if you look at my decolonization video. But this really stirred up a lot of anti-government sentiment, that the government wasn't working and that there needed to be a change. And actually, the federal government will go to de Gaulle to help craft a new constitution and get him to be their president. And as a result, we have the creation of the Fifth Republic, which, by the way, is what is the government of France right now. So in this particular case, they really focused on trying to make a strong central government, okay? And so the power of the president is massively increased. The president gets to choose a prime minister. He can have the power to dissolve parliament. He actually supervises both defense and foreign policy in order to actually strengthen the nation and do more things on their own terms. They actually pull out of NATO for a while and focus on developing nuclear technology. Not only nuclear power, but France will actually be the third nation in the world to develop nuclear weapons. So pretty big, important idea. And here's just a view of how it would work. You do have a Senate and an Assembly. The basic government, this is the day-to-day stuff. But so a prime minister is more of like the internal government and the domestic stuff. But the president of the republic is supposed to do foreign stuff. However, he can actually be in charge of these things. Universal suffrage, so that's good, but the president in this case just has quite a bit of power. And so things actually go in the first part of his term very, very good. They do, strengthen the military. They have nuclear weapons, and then they're really going to put some more money into economics. They push hard on investing in the economy, and actually from 1958 to 68, the GDP increases 5.5% annually, which is actually faster than the United States of America. Understand that a 3% increase in your nation's GDP is good. So to be at 5.5% for 10 years running is pretty impressive. And they're really going to push on exports. One of the big exporters that they'll get into is automobiles. So on the top left, you see Peugeot. And on the right, you see Renault. And they're also big arms dealers as well. France is actually the number 3 seller of arms today. There will be some things like coal and steel and the railroads that he will nationalize. The government will take control of them. And for the early part of his term, it actually works out really well. Unfortunately, the second half of his term, a lot of the nationalization resulted in prices and cost of living to skyrocket. There ends up being large strikes, student protests, and de Gaulle actually resigns in April of 1969. Just about, a little more than 50 years ago at this point. But we do have the reestablishment of a democracy in France, and that seems to still be functional all the way to today. The big move, though, was in West Germany. After the war, West Germany was really a mess. And they're going to basically, instead of the United States and Britain and France trying to control those three different zones, they're going to form it into the Federal Republic of Germany. And that will be a democracy, and that will be led by their first chancellor, Konrad Adenauer, as you see over there. And one of the big things is that they really seek to move on from World War II while still recognizing what they did. I have here reconciliation, and modern day Germany is really the birth of West Germany, even after unification. And they look to reconcile with France. They approach and teach about the failings of the Nazis, why the Nazis happened. They look to make amends for the Holocaust. They're very, very aggressive in that. The interesting thing, and I've talked about this before in other videos, whereas Japan after World War II is not allowed to have an army, still the case today, because of the Cold War and because of the tension in this region, they will actually be able to develop an army. And Germany, of course, has an army today, but it really started with making sure that West Germany had an army. And really that was in response because they are right on that border between East and West Europe, and that they needed to be armed in case there were any issues with Russia. And really he's going to do some incredible things with the economy. They're going to develop a new currency. They open up free markets. They'll lower taxes and regulations to get more business growth. They will absolutely accept massive amounts of aid from the U.S., so from 1950 to 1965, they'll actually double, wages will double, real wages will double, so actually the amount of money that's in your pocket will double. Unemployment in 1965 actually drops to 0.4%, which is ridiculous. They will also provide jobs to people from foreign nations through a guest worker program. And by 1995, their economy, 1995, their economy really was rolling. And by 1955, their actually economy was larger than it was before the war. So you just see massive growth, and it really was considered a turnaround. I mean, West Germany was just destroyed, right? And by 1965, they're right up there with one of the more successful nations in the world. It really was an incredible turnaround. And the final issue and area to talk about is Italy. So in Italy, they will vote to abolish the monarch, and they will get rid of monarchy in general, and you will get the creation of a democratic republic. And the leading political party will be the Christian Democrats, which will work very, very closely with the Catholic Church, which, as we've discussed the history of Italy throughout this year, that makes a lot of sense. And their first prime minister will be a man by the name of Alcide de Gasperi. And he's a pretty remarkable individual. He had resisted Mussolini early on, was actually even jailed with it, and probably would have been executed if not for the Vatican stepping in. So you can see how much they held him in high regard. He actually develops a social security system in Italy. He tries to institute a variety of measures aiding the poor and unemployed. He's also seen as one of the founding fathers of the European Union because of his work with the European Economic Community and stuff like that. And he's also one of the longest-serving prime ministers in Italian history. And what we see there early on, that things tend to work really, really well. But unfortunately, you'll have a variety of different parties that come in. You'll see a rise of communism in this area. And Italy, and government-wise, basically the hallmark is instability. Since 1945, they've had 58 different prime ministers who basically institute a new government every single time there's a new prime minister. And so you get continual reorganization of the government. You have issues with financial policies. They have issues dealing with immigrants and migrants. Of course, doing this in 2020. And so with COVID-19, it's been particularly devastating in Italy as well. And so sometimes, even though when you create a democracy, it doesn't always work wonderfully well. I mean, it is not uncommon for a prime minister in Italy to serve for less than a year. Actually, it's more the norm. And even though they get started off on the right foot and get themselves reestablished after getting rid of Mussolini, we still see a lot of like I said, instability and change. All right, guys. Well, hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of some of the nations after the war. And I will see you soon.